Hello everybody, welcome back, or if you're new here, welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoy what you see today and that you stick around for more. Spring is in the air and the weather is getting warmer and the days are getting longer, and my allergies have kicked in like nobody's business. In fact, my whole family is sneezing and sniffling. It's been crazy. As I was making use of the leftover paint on my palette, it reminded me of spring, and so I decided to go with a floral theme once again. And because I like to work more in an abstract form, I am utilizing the negative painting technique once again, and then just drawing some very loose daisy-like flowers with a pencil. But before I do that, I want to make sure I have my colors mixed nicely on my page. I'm trying to keep that first layer fairly light, especially since the petals of the daisy flower are white generally. I don't want that first layer to be too dark. This is a challenge for me because I tend to be very heavy-handed with my colors, and this is actually a very good practice for me to keep everything nice and light. I am using Daniel Smith watercolors, but you can do this with any kind of watercolors that you have on hand. Because I had quite a few colors on my palette, I didn't quite remember what I was using, but I tried to link everything in the description box below the video in case you're interested. The colors got a little muddy, so I had to mop them up. I used a little bit of blue in the beginning, and I was hoping that the blue would mix in with the purple to give it a darker shade of purple, but it didn't really work. So I mopped it up with a little bit of a paper towel, and I added instead some more yellow in it. That happens sometimes, but I'm not worried about it. I just mop it up and start over. Okay, so this is the one we did together, and then I did another one because I had, again, some leftover paint. So it turns out I like this one better. Why? I banged the dish on this one and it leaves marks when I do that, and I have to remember not to do that anymore. So I'm gonna use this for something else, but from here on out we're gonna continue with the second one, just so that you are not confused as to why they look different now. For the next layer, I am outlining my shapes with just a colored pencil. And like I said, I wanted daisies, but instead of the top view, I am making them be seen from the side, just to mix it up a little bit. I do this with every negative painting technique. And if you haven't seen any of my other videos on that subject, I just use a regular pencil. What you also could use is a watercolor pencil, and that way when you apply the next layer of watercolor, those lines will then blend in and disappear a little bit more. For me, it's not necessary, so I just use regular pencils. I don't really care if they are perfect. Some of them turned out a little bit more wonky than others, and that is totally fine. I also decided to immediately draw the leaves. That way they feel a little bit more incorporated and I can overlap the petals and the leaves and make it look a little bit more organic. This is such a great technique for beginners. I highly recommend it because the first layer you can just play with your colors. You can learn about how they mix. You can maybe figure out what doesn't mix so well, and it's very forgiving. And then with the next layer you can have a little bit of fun, and all kinds of shapes work really well with that. And then you can practice being a little bit more painterly, try and really get into those corners with your brush and apply the watercolor with a little bit more precision. If this is your first time working with this technique, a good piece of advice I can give you is to keep the paper fairly wet. And also, if you have larger areas to cover and it's taking you a little while, it is a little bit easier to keep the colors on the lighter side, especially on the areas that you're not currently working on, so that you don't get harsh lines. I am still trying to remember this, and sometimes I get caught up and I forget that I am actually covering a larger area, and so I still sometimes get those harsher lines, but I am trying to remember that I need to just keep the paper on the wetter side, and that will help with that issue. If this is your first time doing this kind of technique, maybe just stick to really simple shapes like squares or circles, and keep the areas for the second layer smaller. There's different ways that you can do the negative painting technique. You could start out with maybe just one or two and make those the topmost layer, and then you can continue to add layers that go deeper and deeper, and then make the whole thing look a little bit more three-dimensional. I have tried that in the past, and for me this is a little bit more difficult. So instead what I do is I take some areas and I just paint them in with a different color, and I like that. For me personally, it makes it a little bit easier. That's not to say that I will never do the other technique anymore. It's just what I prefer at the moment. On a side note, I added the Quin purple to this screen, and I really like how those two colors mingle together. Because I also had Quin purple in the background, it ties it in very nicely. And this is what I have so far. As you can see, the flowers turned out a little bit more pink. I would have liked them to be a little bit lighter, and I think because I used the second background instead of the first, that second background turned out just a little bit darker than the first one. So I decided to paint the core of the flower in an orange, and later on I am using a Posca pen to outline the petals just to make them stand out from the rest of the background a little bit more. Now this Posca pen has a different tip. It says fine liner on it, but if you have the PC1M, they are in fact almost identical in the line thickness and size. It does say bullet shaped on the PC1M, and the one I'm using, it says pin type, but they're both 0.7 millimeters. And so if you don't have this pen, don't go out and buy it if you have the other one, is what I'm trying to say. What I decided not to show you is me struggling with one of the other white pens that I have. I keep going back and trying to give it the benefit of the doubt, and it just is not happening, at least not on this kind of watercolor paper. So Posca pens for me work the best, but that also means that I have to go over the lines more than once. So you just saw me showing you. You can't really see it, unfortunately, on camera, but when I look at them as I am drawing the lines, I can see a definite difference when I go over the lines more than once. I decided not to use doodles on this page. I wasn't feeling the doodles for this, and so I just stuck with some simple gold lines around the leaves, and later I am adding just some simple lines inside the white petals just to give them a little bit more movement and make them stand out just a little bit more. I still felt that it needed to be a little bit more white, and that's what I decided to do. And of course, no painting is completely finished unless I put some dots on it. And I really like how I decided not to fill the whole center of the flower with dots, but just one side. It just makes it so much more whimsical that way. For the fine lines in the petals, I decided to use the Jelly Roll pen, and that is because that is an actually very fine pen. The set that I bought came with a size 10 and a size 5. I don't like to use the 5 because it scratches on the paper in a weird way, and that is not something that I enjoy. And the 10 was just a little bit too thick, so the 8 was perfect. Oh wow, it feels like a Goldilocks moment just now. I am so happy with how this is turning out. Not only gives it a little bit more white and makes it stand out a little bit more, but it also gives it movement, and that is exactly what I wanted. However, I am going over the lines multiple times as well. It's just because that white tends to soak into the paper and then it almost disappears. So I have succumbed to the fact that I just have to go over the lines more than once. And now I'm finishing up with some very, very small dots at the end of those lines, and oh my gosh, I just love it so much. And because I am not using any kind of doodles on it, I decided to go in with my colored pencils and just give it a little bit more movement here and there. You can't really see it on the center of the flowers that much, at least not on camera. In real life, it's a little bit more visible, but that's okay. I'm fine with that. And then I decided to do the same with the leaves and just keep it super simple. And to finish it up, I felt like the background needed just a little bit more shimmer. You see me dabbing the gold off a little bit. I do that so that they don't take over the whole page. I just want there a little bit of a shimmer here and there. And by taking some of the gold off, it's not so in your face. And this concludes today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know if you're going to try something like this for yourself. I hope you have a wonderful weekend wherever you are in the world. Stay creative, and I will see you guys next Friday.